Alright, so I had this idea about, because you know, everyone is all about, hey man, what's your favorite Pokemon, what's your top 10 Pokemon, etc., etc. Maybe not to me personally, but in general. I think it would be a far more interesting idea to break it down by region, because there's so many Pokemon that I just think are super interesting and I like and all that, that rather than doing a top 10, it's more like a top 70 generation by generation. The problem with this is that after I hit Generation 3, I have no idea what I'm going to do because I don't have any sort of way of getting footage of Gen 4, 5, 6, or 7. So that's a fork in my road, but I'll worry about that some other day. But for the moment, let's focus on at least the very first 3, because that's what I can do right now. Now, before I go any further and even list the first one, I do want to clarify, this is a purely subjective list. This has nothing to do with tier listings or competitive or any sort of the shit. This is all just personal favorites. It's all just to do with me, nothing else. So don't get anal about an opinion, because you got yours, I got mine. That's all there is to it. Starting off at the bottom, I'm going to have to put Haunter. Most of the reason I like him is because I kind of like the idea of a disembodied head with floating hands. And I like the ghost Pokemon, I think that's really cool. But I always loved the way Haunter's cry sounded in Pokemon Stadium. I think it's really, really interesting sounding. I think it's like way better than anything that they've used ever since. And I kind of miss the idea that it never like existed further. I like the evolution line of floating head with hands, and then full body. I think the entire Ghastly family is really cool, but Haunter's just like a super interesting middle ground. It is useful as a Pokemon, it's fast and offensive, and then Gengar just makes that a little bit better. But between the two, and like, hey man, which do you think looks cooler? I'm gonna give it to Haunter any day. Now, a lot of these are really hard to explain because it's like, how do you explain why something's your favorite? So I'm trying my best on this, but this is one that I've always had difficulties explaining why I liked it, and it's Victory Bell. Why do I like it? I don't have a fucking clue. The first thing I could think of is I remember at some point as a kid, I used Victory Bell on my team and I beat the Elite Four in Stadium. And I was like, yeah, maybe it has something to do with the idea of like the ongoing gag with it eating James. I don't know, could be that. Maybe it's just like the design, like this treacherous venomous plant that can eat you or whatever. Like something about it was cool to me. Because I remember hating Bellsprout. I thought Bellsprout was crap, but Victory Bell's awesome. I like Victory Bell. As a Pokemon, I think it's pretty decent. It's got some good attack power to it, and I think it can take a hit. It's not super slow, so there you go. There's that for you. Now this one's weird because I never thought of Nidoking at any point ever really being my favorite. It was always one I used a lot because, in my opinion, it was one of the best ground types in the game. Because, like, it was strong, it could take a hit, and it was fast. It was the only real ground type that was fast and had power to it. And it was just a nice balance. So I always liked Nidoking for that aspect. I liked its cry. I liked the way it would, like, do its attacks. Like, it would look like it's charging at you. I liked the way it would faint, how it would roll over onto its back, just kind of like that. I always just thought it was super cool looking, like a total badass would be. So yeah, it's been one of my favorites. Raising one, as far as like competitive goes, it could be a lot better, but you know what, it's still going to be my favorite, and it's going to be one I'm going to try to make work. I like the idea that it has such a diverse move pool as well, so like you can teach a lot of different things and make it super useful. But yeah, there you go. Nidoking's always been my homie for about 20 years now. What a world. This one I remember liking because again, I thought the design was super cool. I liked it. I always thought the fossil Pokemon were super interesting in Kanto, and I kind of like the idea of it. And it is one that I wish they expanded on more, but as time has gone on, they have expanded upon it more, because I think they've done fossil Pokemon in at least 3 separate generations that I can think of. 4 generations. But Kabutops always stood out to me. The only thing is, in Gen 1, he was kind of shit because he was a physical attacker. But the Gen 4 physical special split, that fixed that a lot. So now he turns out to be like a lot better. Amistar is technically still more useful, but I really like Kabutops. I like the way he looks, I like the way he fights. I don't know, it's just, there's not really much to say about it. It's just, it's always seemed really cool to me, and it's always been one that I've always wanted to make as good as I can get it, and try and kick someone's ass with it, because I always thought it was cool. If you asked me even 10 or 20 years ago what one of my favorite Pokemon would have been, I wouldn't have told you Slowpoke. But now, I'll happily tell you Slowpoke. It was because I used Slowpoke in, I think, Gold or Silver, and then I was like, holy hell, Slowpoke's awesome. Like, he's kind of a tough guy, he can deal some damage to you, just overall, he's really, really dopey and goofy, and I just think that's super charming and entertaining. So, like, I never cared for Slowpoke before, but now it's one of my favorites. And, like, it doesn't matter if it's Slowbro or Slowking. I've found more use out of Slowbro than Slowking, but I know that it's kind of essentially the same thing. But yeah, no, I like Slowpoke. One thing I never understood as a kid was, like, the whole fishing with its tail makes it evolve, but then in the game you actually just make it to level 37 and it's just magically there. So I wish that was a thing that was kind of true, because I always thought it was like a super cool characteristic of it. But hey man, it's cool. Slowpoke kicks ass to me, man. As stated in the feigning video, Porygon has always been one of my favorites. The only thing about Porygon that I kind of dislike is just, I mean, I guess you could say at the time, like, he just wasn't all that good, but he did get better, and much better. But, like, I always liked the design of Porygon, and I always just thought Porygon was cool. I liked the idea that he kind of resembled blocks to me. I liked his cry, I liked his feint, I liked his animations, I liked Tri-Attack, I liked the idea that it could learn Psychic. But, technically speaking, he's not the best thing out there, so that's kind of a letdown, but it's never going to change my opinion or make me hate Porygon any less. I remember being kind of psyched about Porygon 2 when it came out. It made me think, it was deliberate. In Stadium 2, where he looked like one of those little birds that would drink the water, he looked kind of like a balloon to me. So he went from blocks to a balloon, and then Porygon Z looks like a twisted up animal balloon that a clown makes with no real design or purpose behind it. So it looks more goofy over time, but Porygon's cool. I like him. As stated earlier, I was always fascinated with the fossil Pokemon, and this one is no exception. Aerodactyl is one that I think was just super cool and awesome looking and all that, but it was also one that, as I've realized it's not exactly the best stat-wise, but damn it, I'm determined to make it good. The perk about Aerodactyl is that it's fast. That's about the only perk. Defensively, he's kind of crap. Offensively, he's okay, but I'm going to make it work. The Mega Evolution, I think, I've not paid attention to its stats, makes it better. But yeah, I like Aerodactyl. I think he looks kind of silly. He looks kind of like he's in a metal band when he's Mega Evolved. But I always liked his cry, I liked his animations, I liked how goofy he was. I like when he'd fly in the air and then he'd look down and like do a little scream while kicking his legs. I always thought that was really cool. Just, there's so many things to like enjoy about the personalities that they give these in the games, even though they're trying to get rid of it, and it's bad. Yet again, at the time, if you had asked me, I probably wouldn't have told you this, but now I can say Ninetales is probably one of my favorites. Mostly, again, just design. In Gen 1 it was really, really good, but since then it's been kind of crap, but you know what, I'm still determined to find ways to make it useful. I found some ways, but it could definitely be better. Things like Drought have definitely helped out Ninetales immensely. I think it can be good. I think it could be really, really useful if you know how to use it right. That's the trick with it, but overall I think Ninetales is a super cool Pokemon, and it's one that like I just wish was better, and I want to make as good as I can make it, because I think it looks cool. Not really too much to say, but I like its cry though. It kind of sounds like a flute, at least in Stadium it does. That's kind of what I would think about, how it sounds like a flute. Alright, this one I can get into super detail about, and that's Gyarados. Now it shouldn't be any sort of surprise considering the way I went through Fire Red with it, but yeah, no, there is nothing in the world more satisfying than beating up Misty with a Gyarados. There is nothing better than, more satisfying than leveling up a Magikarp and turning it into a Gyarados and demolishing everything in sight. It's fast, it's powerful, it's defensive. Kind of had a rough turn because the physical special split, so it was technically worse back then. But I never really had a problem with it because it's like, even though it had a low special attack stat, it would still knock people out with Surf fairly well, so I never understood it. But yeah, it always worked really well. I like how intimidating it looks. I like the intimidate ability. I just like feeling like a total badass with it. The water flying part always confused me, but I never complained because I like the ground immunity to it. The downside is it's like, oh, it's completely weak to electric, but you know what? I'm not a moron to send out a Gyarados against an electric type, so I don't really have to worry too much. And then to top this list off is going to be Zapdos. Primary reason for that is I remember as a kid always loving it because firstly it was the best electric type in Gen 1, secondly was the fact that it was immune to ground. So that right there made it feel indestructible because the only things you were going to have is like rock and ice. And that was very few and far between, so it was always super powerful, and then just there was that. I still like it, I still think it's awesome. Kind of a shame that Thundurus is, no joke intended, stolen its thunder because it's stronger and has Volt Absorb, but it's still one of my favorites and still one I prefer to use like all the time. It is the best legendary bird. Yeah, that's pretty much the bulk of it. It's just I liked how strong it was, I liked how it was immune to ground, I liked the way it felt like it was the best thing in the game, even though it technically wasn't, and it will always forever be one of my favorites ever. Its design looks pretty cool too. So that right there is part 1 of a 7-part saga of this stupid list thing that I think I should do because I want to do it, and because I think it's better than just a top 10 or a top 50 or any sort of mix and match. So I think the way I'm doing it is pretty nice. It's just I'm gonna hit a roadblock after I hit Gen 3. So that was that. Say what you like. Remember, it's all subjective. And yeah, I'm Jason Farr. See you guys later.